What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Sunday night recap presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, Simon, joined as always by my co-hosts, Jay and John Luke. What's up, guys?
What's good?
What's going
How you doing,
on?
Simon?
I'm good. It's another day of Sunday football. I think the NFL's still a little bit broken. Weird things keep on happening, but we'll talk about that during the games. The game breakdowns today. Sorry, excuse me. It's this kombucha breaking back in. It was a double.
That's impressive.
Today, before we get started, I wanted to remind everyone watching this, if you have not done so already and you're watching this, that means you're already on the FanDuel YouTube or Twitch channels. If you are on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you are on FanDuel, if you are on Twitch, hit the follow button. FanDuel has a whole team of awesome content creators out there helping you win money and win your league. So make sure you're subscribed across all platforms, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, to get the most up-to-date fantasy information from FanDuel. What's up, Jay Wall? He says, hey, boys. Simon.
Oh, hey, Jay Wall.
What's up, Maria? Welcome in. Happy Sunday. Let's talk fantasy. We are hyped to talk some fantasy today.
Yes,
guys, we're gonna go ahead and jump into our Sunday night preview. Break this one down a little bit. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. The Steelers at 5-3-1. The Chargers at 5-4, some disappointing performances as of late. And Big Ben is expected to play for the Steelers. I know that was in question going into this weekend, whether he was going to come off the COVID list, but it looks like he is good to go. So we are going to have Big Ben ready. Jay, are you expecting a bounce back game for Justin Herbert this week? I know he's been a little bit disappointing for fantasy managers. Do you think going up against this Pittsburgh defense is going to be the medicine for that?
I wouldn't say necessarily a bounce back, but I think he'll do okay. I don't expect Pittsburgh to be able to do a whole lot offensively. So I don't think he's really necessarily going to have to air out the ball. You know, Ben Roethlisberger, he was experiencing symptoms with COVID. It wasn't one of these cases where he wasn't. So the Chargers already have a really tough pass D. I think it's going to be big Najee Harris week. So I don't necessarily think that he's going to have to air the ball out. So I think he'll be okay, but I'm not expecting big things.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I do love that over here they tied against the Lions last week, but it's listed as a loss because that definitely felt like a loss for them.
That's a loss.
That's some shade thrown by Number Fire here.
16-16.
It's a big L.
I bet if you go to the Lions page, there's a W next to it. It's just going as a win for the Lions. Guys, we're going to start the players that you're going to start in this game. Austin Eckler is an obvious start. Najee Harris is an obvious start. JL, are there any players in this game you're expecting maybe a breakout performance or a bounce back performance from? Mike Williams, you think he gets it going again this week?
I hope he does. I don't see like any sort of clear indication why things change. I think he's still probably dealing with that injury, but you know, Mike Williams is one of those guys who can just pop off any one of these weeks. This week is as good as any.
Yeah. I'm with you guys on this one. Before we move on to the games that already happened today, let's give some score predictions for this one. I have been abysmal with my Sunday night football predictions on this show. Just really bad. So I'll go first. You guys pick the other team and we'll be good to go. Then 2 out of the 3 of us will get it right for sure. I'm going with the Chargers in this one. I know they've been disappointing as of late, but I think they've got the talent. And I think there's going to be some offensive changes. This is the type of season where you start seeing coaches start to adjust the offensive game plan. And Brandon Staley seems like a very smart coach, and I expect that to happen a bit here. I think we see this Chargers offense moving a bit more like we did in the first couple weeks of this season. I'll say final score of this game, 24-17 Chargers. Jay, what do you think?
I'm going to go with you, so it's probably not going to be good, but I think there might be a little more offense than that. So I'm going to go 27-21 Chargers. And not a whole lot more, but just a little bit.
A little bit. JL, are you agreeing with us that the Chargers are going to take this, or are you going on the
am
Pittsburgh
agreeing
side?
with you guys. I'm going Chargers, but I think the Steelers will cover the spread here. I think it'll be 21-24 Chargers 24, Steelers 21.
Okay, JL saying the Steelers are going to cover the spread here.
Did all three of us say the Steelers are going to score 21 points? Is that what you said too, Simon?
I said 17.
Okay, never mind. Just ignore I said anything.
Very close. Ravens fan supports the L from Maria. As a Browns fan, I support the L there too. That feels like an L.
Giants fan supports the L as well.
If you guys are ready, we're going to move into our first game of the day. And I talked about games that seemed a little bit broken, and this is the one that came to mind. The Texans beating the Tennessee Titans 22-13. Before we get into that one, though, we have a very important question from Jay. Have you guys ever seen Jay, or from Matt, have you ever seen Jay and Matt Rule in the same room?
I, for one, have not.
We do both live in North Carolina
Jay,
now, but
Jay, have you seen yourself and Matt Rule in the same room?
No, I have not.
Only rooms with a mirror.
Careful, Nicolas Cage is coming here trying to solve this mystery.
And steal the Declaration of Independence.
And steal it again.
I forget why we were talking about Nicolas Cage solving mysteries, but for some reason
it was
that is
Quiplash. It was my answer. It was one of my answers on Quiplash.
Guys, this Houston Texans Tennessee Titans game did not go how at least I thought it was going to, and I think the majority of people expected this game to go. The 1-8 Texans upsetting the Tennessee Titans. The big thing that I wanted to talk about here, it felt like we had finally gotten some clarity in the Tennessee backfield, right? A couple weeks without Derrick Henry, we were confused. Is it going to be Adrian Peterson? Is it going to be Jerry McNichols? And we thought the answer was it's going to be Devonta Freeman, right? That seemed like the player that came out of that mess as the one to roster. Well, today that did not play out in your favor. So we had Adrian Peterson with 9 carries leading it, and then Hilliard and Foreman each with 7 carries. But Dontrell Hilliard got 10 targets for 8 receptions and 47 yards as well. I know they were down in this game, but Peterson and Foreman were irrelevant in this game for fantasy purposes, and Dontrell Hilliard came out of nowhere as the running back to start in this offense, at least this week. Jay, do you think Dontrell Hilliard is now the guy to roster in this offense? Was this a game where they were down and they needed the receiving back? What do you make of this mess of a backfield here in Tennessee?
I think you said it perfectly. I think it's a mess, and it's a mess that I don't want any part of. If I have anybody on my roster, I want it to be Donta Foreman, just because I think of anybody, he's got the most upside if he is able to get most of the carries. But I just don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be a week-to-week basis based on game situation, ride the hot hand, like some coaches like to say. I think Adrian Peterson has gotten most of the goal line work. So I think it's just going to be ugly, and I really don't want any part of it.
JL, what about you? I saw you making a little bit of a face on there. Are you in agreement with Jay?
Yeah, well, sort of, yes. I think that, Dante Hilliard, that's his first name, right? I just saw the D and assumed it was Dante.
Dontrell
Hilliard. I think he's filling in for that Jeremy McNichols role, right? Jeremy McNichols is used even before Derrick Henry got hurt. He's being used in the passing game. He was getting a lot of receiving work, and I think that's what we saw with Hilliard here.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I think it was game script that got Hilliard involved here. It felt like it did feel a bit like the Miles Sanders fake out that we got whenever he went down injured, though, where Miles Sanders not getting the work. He goes down injured, and then all of a sudden Jordan Howard and Boston Scott each have like 100
Run
carries
first
a game.
team.
Like we were sitting here like Jerry McNichols is going to get heavy receiving work. He was ruled
out. He wasn't active for this game because of the concussion.
Right. That's the comparison to Miles Sanders. He then goes down, and Dontrell Hilliard gets all the targets that we've been projecting for Jeremy McNichols the past couple weeks that haven't necessarily been coming his way. Maybe this is a good sign for McNichols when he comes back, that if they're in these game scripts, he's going to be used that way. But I'm with you guys. This is a mess.
The only thing, too, though, is Julio was out, and then A.J. Brown got hurt not once but twice. So, who knows if one of those two are on the field, if the running backs would still be getting that type of target share.
Yep.
That's a good point.
Also on the Tennessee side, it was a really messy day offensively, just overall. Ryan Tannehill threw 4 interceptions. So I'm really not taking too much from this game besides that backfield is an absolute mess.
It was pouring there too. So
it was pouring
you
there.
Take that into consideration as well.
So I have a question for you guys. Who scored more fantasy points this week? Jonathan Taylor or every player on the on the Houston Texans offense?
Jonathan Taylor.
Combined.
Jonathan Taylor.
It was Jonathan Taylor.
You could have said double, and I still would have said Jonathan Taylor.
Jonathan Taylor outscored the entire Texans offense. It's not double with Tyrod in there. Without Tyrod in there, it is close to double, but you put Tyrod in there. But Jonathan Taylor still outscores them. And I just wanted to highlight that outside of Tyrod Taylor in Superflex leagues, Brandon Cooks is a flex play. I don't know who else you can plug into your lineup. Jay, is there a single other player on this Texans offense that you're interested in plugging in?
Nope, not a single. Nico Collins had a touchdown called back. I still like him long-term in a dynasty. I think he's talented, but it's really Brandon Cooks or bust.
Yeah. I mean, you look at this, I wasn't counting the DST or the kicker because those are not offensive players in that stat I was giving. But outside of Tyrod Taylor, I just remember being shocked. This is a game that the Texans won 22-13. They were the winning team and they had no usable fantasy assets in this entire game. Not a single one outside of Tyrod Taylor. Shocking. Not much else we can say there besides the Texans are a fantasy
Who
mess.
got the touchdowns?
Tyrod rushed them in.
Did Rex Burkhead? Okay. Did Rex Burkhead get one? Thought I saw somebody tweeting about Rex Burkhead.
He got 4 fantasy points, so unless he threw one in and did nothing else, threw in a 0-yard touchdown, then he didn't.
With the Texans, I wouldn't be surprised if that happened.
Guys, we are going to move on to our next game. It is the Miami Dolphins versus New York Jets, the prime matchup of this week. The game I know everyone was looking forward to the most.
Everybody was so excited for this one. But I will say Tua Tagovailoa played well again. 273 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have an interception. And Myles Gaskin, every other week, it works. I don't know what it is, but it continues to work. He had 89 yards, 3 catches, and he did have a touchdown. So he had 18.6 fantasy points. Other than that, Waddle had a disappointing week, 8 catches, 65 yards. So nothing to get too excited about.
He did get the rushing touchdown, which is what saved his week. From a receiving standpoint, he was disappointing. I understand that, but he got you the rushing touchdown, which saved his day.
And then Mac Hollins came down with a 65-yard bomb. Tua has continued to impress when he's been on the field. So JL, we'll start with you on this one. In Superflex League, is Tua somebody you're comfortable starting every week?
Absolutely. I've been higher on Tua than I think most people. I think a lot of people have given up on Tua and attributed these injuries to look who it is. Attributed these injuries to his skill, but we just haven't seen him really play in enough games in his career to say Tua is a bust. I think he's a fantastic quarterback. I think he's he's on a team that needs to be rebuilt around him, and they're starting to do that. I was very much against the whole Deshaun Watson trade. I think they should have stuck with Tua, and they did. I think he's absolutely an every week. You can start him. I don't think you need to start him every week. And his rushing floor definitely gives him definitely a nice floor for fantasy.
Simon, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he's in that back end QB1, high end QB2 range in Superflex leagues, like especially. I'm looking at dynasty formats right now. He's a top 12 guy probably in dynasty formats. And then in redraft next year, he's probably in that 12 to 15 range, which is a guy you're starting every single week in Superflex. I expect him to continue to get better in this offense. And I expect this offense to continue to get better. Maybe not through this year, but through the end of next year. I think Tua is a good quarterback. Not a world beater, but he's good.
And JL, I think he said it perfect. A lot of, people are still down on him for some reason. They're not giving him any credit. And I think you're right, Simon. I think he is in that, 15-ish range, and he could turn out to be a huge value next year if people are still doubting him, especially if they're able to shore up the line. But on the other side of the ball, the elite Joe Flacco threw for almost 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, and it led to a breakout game by Elijah Moore. 8 catches, 141 yards, and a touchdown, 25.6 points on FanDuel. Is this Elijah Moore's big breakout game? Are you guys expecting this to continue when Zach Wilson come back? Or is it just thanks to, even though, Joe Flacco is Joe Flacco, he does still have a big arm and can, get it done through the air sometimes. And
does a breakout game mean that it has to continue? This is the moment, and then it's just up from there? Because I think this was a great game showcasing his talent. Those who still were had Elijah Moore flying under the radar, didn't realize what a talent he was in the NFL. Maybe this was the breakout game for them. Do I expect this to continue rest of season with any of the quarterbacks, even if Joe Flacco stays in there? Absolutely not. This Jets offense isn't good enough to support a receiver getting over 20 fantasy points every single week. It can't. They're not going to score enough touchdowns for that to happen. He's going to have good games and he's going to have bad games. It's going to be inconsistent, just like this Jets team is.
JL?
I completely agree with Simon. This is, you could have called his what was it, 2 touchdown game a couple weeks ago, his breakout game. I think a lot of people did, and I'm not confident at all. He's someone I might throw in my flex in a good matchup like this week, but I'm not gonna trust him as an every week starter in fantasy. I'm not gonna throw him in my FanDuel lineups at all.
I could not agree more. Flex play in good matchups, and that's pretty much it. It was a little concerning though for Michael Carter, who has really had seen some consistency, but that was with a different quarterback. Now, Joe Flacco, Zach Wilson's eventually going to be back. He only saw one target, one catch, 9 rushes for 63 yards. While I do think he is going to get some more rushes, I'm concerned that there's lack of targets, and I really don't know what to make of him. So, Simon, we'll go to you here first. What are your thoughts on Michael Carter for the rest of the season?
Yeah, without the receiving work, he's not going to be consistent enough for you. And we saw it for a couple games there. Whenever Mike White was in, he had games of 9 targets, 14 targets. And then even last week, he had 6 targets, which, is fine. You're perfectly happy with 6 targets for a running
absolutely.
back. But if he's not getting that, he isn't a viable RB1 in fantasy. He probably moves from that RB1 fringe RB2 range down to an RB3 rest of the season. You can play him. He's going to get some work, but without the receiving work, he's downgraded like a full tier in my eyes.
JL?
Yeah, I completely agree. It's Jets offense.
Also, Albert reminding us that Carter left in the 3rd quarter with an ankle injury.
Did.
So if we, but before he left, it still doesn't look like he was doing all that much. He wasn't involved in that passing game while he was in the game.
That's where he was getting most of his value, where people were comfortable starting him as an RB2. And if he's not getting those targets, like you said, he's more of an RB3 flex play. Although with the way that the running back landscape is these days, you might have to start him as your running back too.
I did in multiple leagues.
There we go.
Cool. If you guys are ready, we're going to move on to the Baltimore Ravens Chicago Bears game. This barn burner of a game, 16-13 final score. The Ravens ended up pulling it out without their starting quarterback, Lamar Jackson. Got the win anyways.
Yeah, the total line on this game was set at 41, according to FanDuel Sportsbook. And there was only 29 points scored in this game. It was very low scoring. Which is ridiculous. Ravens were 1.5 point favorites. And Chicago won by 3 points.
Right.
Top 5 fantasy QB today. Still elite. Always elite. Never not.
I was going to say, who was arguing that Joe Flacco wasn't elite? None of us said that.
Yeah. But yeah, we had a bunch of injuries in this game, a bunch of inactives. Allen Robinson inactive for this game. Tyler Huntley filling in for Lamar Jackson, who, like Simon said, was out with that sickness. He did not look good. I don't know if anybody saw those videos before the game, but he was not looking good. He was giving us the waddle. We had Latavius Murray back right out, and Lev Bell was recently released. And so we had Devonta Freeman on the Baltimore side of the ball. Devonta Freeman had 16 rushing attempts for 49 yards and touchdown. And Latavius Murray was the clear number 2 here with 10 carries for 32 yards. How are you guys viewing these guys rest of the season? Are they matchup dependent, reliable week-to-week starts? How are you throwing them in your lineups at all?
I prefer Freeman over Murray rest of season. Murray was slightly more efficient with the ball this week, it looks like, but neither one of them was wildly efficient. Both less than 3.5 yards per carry with the work they were given. They've been giving Freeman more work. Latavius Murray, maybe this was just them easing him back, but he's done enough to keep more work, I think. I'm not hyped about starting either of these guys. They eat into each other, and then Lamar Jackson will be back as well to steal some of that rushing work. They're back-end RB2s, RB3s, flex play kind of players. Take whichever one you like better, put them in the RB3 range. Whichever one you like worse, put them in the flex play range. For me, that's Devonta Freeman as an RB3, and Latavius Murray in the flex.
Yeah, I completely agree everything Simon said, other than them being in the back end RB2, RB3 range. I honestly think when they're both on the field, they're flex plays, and you're basically hoping one of them is going to get in the end zone. That's pretty much their value while they're both there. Especially like you said, Lamar Jackson running the ball plenty. That's pretty much it. I don't trust either one of them. You might, out of necessity, might have to start one of them. I do prefer Devonta Freeman over Latavius Murray because, when he was getting run, Freeman's looked better these past couple of weeks. He looked like he's getting used to the system. He's not Devonta Freeman from a couple of years ago, but he's looked pretty decent. But I just don't think he's going to get enough work to return that RB2, even back end RB2 value.
Yeah, I think we've seen him be pretty consistent. Out of these guys, it's definitely Devonta Freeman. He's getting more carries, more receptions. So in any sort of PPR scoring format, he's going to be the more valuable back here. I do agree with you guys on Latavius Murray, though. He definitely falls in that category of just maybe he gets some of that goal line work, Fulch's touchdown. But otherwise, it's going to be up and down. But I'm pretty comfortable with Devonta Freeman week to week as your RB3. Let's see. We had Mark Andrews had a decent game. Lost my notes here. I believe he had 8 receptions today, which was nothing crazy or incredible, but pretty good targets for a tight end here. And then I know a lot of people thought this was going to be a Rashad Bateman week with Marquise Brown out. He only caught 3 receptions on 6 targets for 29 yards, which might be just attributed to Tyler Huntley being the QB and them not having much of a rapport. And also not many weapons on that offense with Marquise Brown being out. Simon, how do you feel about Rashad Bateman going forward?
You hit exactly what I was going to say here. I think I was hyped on a Rashad Bateman week, assuming Lamar Jackson was the starting quarterback. A lot of that chemistry has been built up with Lamar, and this offense just looked all out of sorts today. It didn't look like the Ravens offense we've seen the past couple weeks. Rashad Bateman's fine. He's carved out a role in this offense, and I believe that. It's been consistent since he came off the IR. I'm not worried. This was a bad week for the Ravens offense as a whole. Rashad Bateman's going to be just fine.
Yeah, I'm with you. On the other side of this ball, Justin Fields did leave the game early with a rib injury when Andy Dalton came in to replace him. Darnell Mooney got 16 targets today. Only caught 5 of them, but he got 16 targets, which is crazy. Jay, how are you feeling about Darnell Mooney going forward? He already had a pretty high target share on the season and just hasn't really been able to convert it. Are you comfortable with Mooney, like throwing Mooney in a FanDuel lineup going forward at all?
Comfortable, no, but with the target share that he's getting, with his explosiveness, he can take one to the house at any time. You see him doing it on the field. It really depends on if Allen Robinson's going to be out there. I know I'm one of the few, but I still believe in Allen Robinson's talent. I think he's not that wide receiver 1, but I still think he can provide solid wide receiver 2 value. So in the pecking order for me, I still want Allen Robinson over Mooney, but Mooney's the ceiling play. Like you're going to get, you have a much better chance of having a big game out of him versus Allen Robinson. So more of a wide receiver 3 flex play type of guy who can potentially have a big game, but especially with the quarterback play that we've seen, you very easily see a disappointing week.
Yeah. How do you feel about Mooney, Simon?
Yeah, he's an upside play. It's not going to be consistent. You're not going to see this, but games like this are well within the range of outcomes. And what's exciting, I know Andy Dalton came in, a lot of this production came from him, but the past couple of weeks, Justin Fields has been looking a lot better. It feels like he's starting to get a feel for this offense, and I expect him to continue to improve the rest of the season. I was so disappointed seeing him go down today because he was a player I was excited to see if he could continue that upward trajectory that he had started. I'm excited for Mooney, but in that same range as Jay. He's a boomer bust kind of play. This was a crazy week target-wise.
This was a crazy week. And the last thing we'll discuss in this game is David Montgomery. Got 14 carries, 58 yards, 1 reception, 1 target for 9 yards. And the next running back in line here is Khalil Herbert with 1 single carry this game. Nobody else. So I think safely David Montgomery's job. Simon, rest of the season, where you David Montgomery is the RB what? Or ARB what? NRB what?
NRB is what he is rest of the season, probably.
RB1, RB2, top 12, top 24.
That's some in-depth analysis, Simon.
Yeah, I got you there. He's a back-end RB1, high-end RB2. He's in that 12 to 15 range. That's where he falls. He's going to get the volume, and volume is king. And like they showed here, they showed you even if he's not doing too well on the ground with the carries he's being given, he's still the guy there. I expected Khalil Herbert to take some of that work, but it looks like the Bears said, nope, David Montgomery's back. It's all David Montgomery.
How do you feel about him, Jay?
I'd say more high-end RB2. I have a hard time the way this offense has looked, putting him in the top 12, as ugly as it even is. So for me, he's more of a rock-solid RB2.
I'm with you, Jay.
There's a rock-solid.
Rock-solid.
And Albert letting us know Montgomery has an easy upcoming schedule. So the schedule's looking pretty nice for Montgomery going forward, according to Albert here. Maybe it would be a little more in line with my back-end RB1.
Yeah, we'll see.
Josh, and I guess Joe Flacco is elite now.
Joe Flacco was always elite.
Just now?
Get it right.
People are going to think we're serious.
I know.
We are serious.
We are 100% serious.
We are 100%. Well, I'm
Super
glad
Bowl
they're going to think
champion,
that.
elite Joe Flacco.
The only player more elite is 2-time Super Bowl champion Eli Manning, right, Jay?
Yeah, you got it right.
Nailed it.
100%.
Nailed it. Guys, the next game, was that it for the Ravens or for the
Yes.
Ravens-Bears game, JL? Cool. And
Yep.
we're going to move on to our Eagles-Saints game here. The Eagles pulled this one out 40-29 in this one. And man, my favorite thing from this game, Jalen Hurts threw for 147 yards, no passing touchdowns, and he's got over 30 fantasy points. He ended the game with almost 31 fantasy points. He didn't throw a single touchdown, threw for less than 200 yards, threw for less than 150 yards. But it doesn't matter when you run 3 in.
Is that kid growing up when you're playing like basketball and they just like they do everything? They always get the ball and they just shoot. They just never pass it. That's Jalen Hurts.
That's
he's killing it.
Like I'm glad we're winning, but I would
Parkin
also
is
like to
like-
play.
Can I score, please? Just once.
Yeah.
And the rest of the fantasy scores show exactly what you're saying, JL. The kicker and the defense has a decent week. Again, I feel like I'm talking about all these teams where the next second and third highest fantasy option was the kicker or the defense. But outside of that, there was really nothing too fantasy relevant on the other side. You're fine with Dallas Goddard and with 8.7 fantasy points. That is a good fantasy week for him. Sorry, excuse me on that one. How do you guys feel about Dallas Goddard rest of season? So Zach Ertz left has been killing it down in Arizona for the Cardinals, but Dallas Goddard, I think, has been a little bit underwhelming since Zach Ertz left compared to expectation. JL, is this just this baseline, this kind of 5 catches, 50, 60 yards? Is that what you expect from Dallas Goddard week in, week out, or do you think he's due for some positive regression?
I think he's absolutely due for some positive regression. Dallas Goddard, out of any player, but specifically also tight ends here, since they're also players, has had the largest jump in target share over the last 3 games compared to his target share on the season, which makes sense, right? Zach Ertz leaving, he's gonna take over that role, get more targets. The thing is, his targets per game did not make as big of a jump. I think it went from like 4.3 to 5. So it wasn't even like a full extra target per game that has increased. I think what we're seeing here is the Eagles offense has just passed less. And so that's resulted in some less targets, but he has the larger target share here. I absolutely think he's due for some positive regression. And he was this close to getting a touchdown that I believe was called back. So I think that you'll see much better weeks for him coming up in the next the next 2 weeks. He's got the Giants and the Jets. So hopefully it's a good time for Dallas Goddard fantasy managers.
I agree with you on that one. Jay, do you agree with JL?
I can speak from experience. The Giants are not a good football team, but that's another story for another day. I do, and I don't. I do think that he's going to have. Yeah, I know. Tell me about it. You know, back in my day, they were good.
Oh, that's another story for another day, son.
That's a story for another campfire.
Oh, campfire does sound nice. I do think that he's going to have better days, but I'm not necessarily too bullish on him because the way that this passing offense looks. You know, this team is going to run the ball, whether it's Jalen Hurts, whether, Sanders looked good, even though he didn't have a huge game. He lost a fumble, but he looked like the Sanders that everybody was clamoring to get more work. So it's working. They're winning games when they're running the ball. So I don't see them opening up this passing game. And it's basically going to be touchdown or bust for Goddard. I do think he is an every week start. I think he's on the back end of that, that tier of, he's not in there with the Mark Andrews, the George Kittles, the Travis Kelce's, but I also don't see him in there with those guys that, you're just hoping, 3 catches, 50 yards and a touchdown. So he's somewhere right in the middle, and it's not due to talent. I just don't trust the passing volume on this offense.
Yep. And JFU928, what's up? Jordan said, what's happened to Devonta Smith? And I think Jay just hit the nail on the head, and JL as well, talking a bit about it. They're just not throwing the ball as much as they would through the first couple weeks of the season. They've switched to a run-heavy team, a run-first team, and it's working for them. They're finding success with it. So the volume, the upside of all of these pass-catching options is downgraded a bit. And Jay, you hit on another thing I wanted to talk about here. So Miles Sanders made his return, and you're right. He did look good in his return. He got 16 carries for 94 yards. That's 5.875 yards a carry in his debut back. That's pretty damn good. But on top of that, it wasn't like he got all of the work. Jordan Howard still got 10 carries for 63 yards in this game, which is also a very good line for a running back. No touchdowns for either one of them. But Jay, do you expect to see a continued split like this where Jordan Howard's getting a significant chunk of the work? Or do you think this was easing Miles Sanders back in and it's going to be the Miles Sanders show?
Do I think it's what they should do? No, but I do think it is what they are going to do. For some reason, they just don't want to give Miles Sanders all the work. But he's the type of guy that can take to the house on one play. He has good yards per carry. I do think he's going to have some good games, but I'm a big Miles Sanders truther as much as I can't stand the Eagles, but I had him more of a high-end RB2, back-end RB1, and I think with the way that Hurts is, digging into his usage, Howard, they've been playing well since he's been back. Howard, like you said, definitely has a role. So for me, Sanders is more of a back-end RB2, until they give him most of the work, which I don't see happening.
Yeah. JL, are you agreeing with Jay on that one?
Yeah, I mean, we were. I feel like everybody was criticizing, Sirianni and this coaching staff for not giving Miles Sanders enough opportunities in the beginning of the season, and coming out of this injury, he was given those opportunities. So that is certainly promising for me. Miles Sanders did a great job with that opportunity today. He had a season high on rushing yards today, and I think that they'll continue to use him that way. But I do agree with Jay. I think they're going to continue to split the backfield like they have all season. But I do think Miles Sanders is the one there.
I'm with you guys. I've seen nothing to believe that they're going to give Miles Sanders 25 plus carries in a single week, but I also have seen nothing to believe that they're not going to continue with the volume that they're giving him right now. It's working for that offense entirely.
And then the one last thing. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying he doesn't necessarily need that either, because he is, he's made his bank on having those big plays, those big long touchdowns. So if he's getting, how many carries was it today? 15 or 16, something 16. Like that. 16. If he breaks one of those for a touchdown, everybody's talking about how Miles Sanders is back. So he is going to be able to make some of those long plays. So it was definitely encouraging to see it. And I do think Miles Sanders is going to have a good finish to the season. Yep.
Guys, we're going to move over to the New Orleans side of the ball. Before we do that, though, Josh said, I thought this one was going to be closer. So did I. I thought this was going to be a closer game. And Albert says, didn't Howard leave the game with a knee injury?
Did. He absolutely, he did. We didn't mention that, but he did leave with a knee injury.
Oh, so, I did not know that.
We have to monitor that.
And Ray in here saying, I need Keenan Allen to get 16 fantasy points tonight to win in this league. That's within the range of outcomes.
Especially if it's PPR, I think you got a great shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you got a shot, Ray. That is not out of this world odd to happen. That is well within the range of outcomes. Guys, on the New Orleans side of this ball, the first thing I wanted to talk about was Adam Troutman. 8 targets, 5 receptions, 58 yards, and a touchdown. Off a pretty good game from Trevor Simeon throwing him the ball, who's looking like he's going to be the starter for the foreseeable future. So, JL, how do you feel about Adam Troutman going forward? Is he commanding enough of this passing offense to be an interesting tight end option? Is he a bye-week flyer? How are you looking at him?
Yeah, I put him more in the category of bye-week flyer. 5 receptions, 8 targets is definitely promising, but I want to see it in more games. And the touchdown was really going to buoy his numbers here. And I'm not gonna chase those touchdown catches, but the fact that there's just not much competition in that offense definitely makes them a promising tight end candidate.
Jay, what about you? With the lack of receiving options there, are you excited about Adam Troutman, or do you view him similarly to JL?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in line with JL. I think you could do a lot worse. But Alvin Kamara wasn't on the field, and he does command a large target share. So Simeon, even though the numbers look okay with the 3 touchdowns, he didn't look good today. So I honestly would not be surprised if Taysom Hill winds up the starter before long. I said a couple weeks ago that I thought that they'd give Trevor Simeon a chance, and he's been decent, but that you lose a game like this, I don't think they're going to continue to run him out there if they're losing games and he's just okay.
This was a tougher matchup, I feel like. Philly is definitely in that category of teams.
Their defense is playing great here recently.
Yeah, and there are matchups where they just don't show up, and then there are matchups where they show up really well. And so I don't blame Simeon too much on this one.
Yeah, and I disagree with you a little bit on that one, Jay. I think they know the kind of player Trevor Simeon is. Know what I mean? And if they are disappointed, I know he didn't look great out on the field, but over 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, how much more do they really expect from him? And if they're I don't see anything that's that below expectations for Simeon to get him benched. If this is a disappointing week for them, if this was a really disappointing week for them, I think they should have started Taysom Hill from the get-go. Know what I mean? Because this is Trevor Simeon. This is the kind of player that he is. This is a decent enough game from him. I know he had the mistakes, but I
And
just
only
don't see
22
anything that would get him
completions
fast.
on 40 attempts is just like that's brutal.
great.
But like you said, yeah, you're not expecting much more to Trevor Simeon, but if he's able to, just be okay and win, then it's a different story. But if
I mean,
you're
look
just
at
okay,
look at his
that's
weapons.
my niece Carly. Hi, Carly.
What up,
Hi,
Carly?
Carly.
She was super hyped when we called her out the other day, so I'm definitely glad you put that up there.
But yeah, I mean, look at like what Simeon has to work with here with no Kamara, like his wide receivers,
85-year-old
Callaway,
Mark Ingram.
Traquan. Yeah, Mark Ingram as top running back and Troutman as his tight end. Like he's
No,
not
I'm
giving
not
a lot to
blaming
work with
Simeon,
here.
but I'm just saying if they're not winning with him under center, they might try something
They'll
else
switch,
because he's not going to elevate the team when they're underperforming, even if it is with guys that are 85 years old like Mark Ingram.
Yes.
Guys, we're going to move on to our next game. The Washington football team taking down the Carolina Panthers and Cam Newton's first start back with them. So Washington won 27-21 in this one.
Yeah, so on the Washington football team side, there's really not much to talk about. Taylor Heineke had a decent game, over 200 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Antonio Gibson had another good game, 19 carries, 95 yards, didn't have a touchdown, but overall, you can't be too disappointed with that. And Terry McLaurin had a typical game, 5 catches, 103 yards, and a touchdown. So not really much to take from that. But Cam Newton came back and looked like Cam Newton of old. 189 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 10 rushes, and that 1 rushing touchdown. My goodness, I don't know if you guys saw it, but
I did.
It was vintage Cam Newton, 46 yards, a rushing touchdown. Simon, we'll start with you here. Is this a product of the matchup, or is Cam Newton an every week start from here on out?
Cam Newton's an every week start. He's got upside. He's got a safe rushing floor. Like whenever he was going back to the Panthers, I said he's got to be at least flirting with your top 12 quarterbacks rest of season. I mean, we just talked about Jalen Hurts, right? Who threw for less than 150 yards, is going to be one of the top quarterbacks on the entire week. Cam Newton's a different beast. He's not Jalen Hurts, but on the goal line, Cam Newton, I feel like he's guaranteed at least 1 rushing touchdown a week almost, right? Like, Jay, if you had to bet, does Cam Newton get a rushing touchdown next week? Yes or no? $100. Which side would you be on?
I would always bet yes.
Right. And I feel like that's the kind of player Cam Newton is. And so that just creates a really nice floor for you. And then he's got the upside. And he's got weapons there with Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson that are going to help him get things done. He's an every week start for me, even in 1 quarterback leagues for the most part.
JL?
Yeah, I completely agree. That rushing floor gives him it makes him very, very attractive in fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you guys 100%. And you guys said it perfect. That safe floor is just, in fantasy football, the rushing floor for a quarterback is a cheat code. Moving on, CMC had a typical CMC game, over 100 combined yards, 7 catches, a touchdown. You're not disappointed with that whatsoever, but you might be disappointed in DJ Moore, even though he did catch a touchdown. He only had 5 catches for 50 yards. So, Cam Newton isn't necessarily, especially at this point in his career, going to air out the ball. What are your expectations rest of the season for DJ Moore? And Jay, I will start with you.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a little bit last week, I think, or maybe on the Friday FanDuel show about is the Cam Newton being named the starter good or bad for DJ Moore? Can it get any worse than it's been? And I think that it's going to be better than it has been. I don't think it's going to be significantly better, just because of the amount that this offense is going to pass the ball versus run it. I think between Cam Newton and Christian McCaffrey, they're gonna take a large share of the work here. And I think DJ Moore is going to have much better weeks than this. I think he's certainly going to live up to that target share that he's had all season, but hasn't necessarily been turning into fantasy production. But I do think that he's limited, just because I don't think Cam Newton needs to pass as much.
Simon?
Yeah, JL hit it almost perfectly on that one. I just want to give a quick shout out. This was his first touchdown since week 4. And as someone who loves DJ Moore, has him on way too many teams, I was so excited to just see him get in the end zone. I think it's a slight upgrade from PJ Walker and Sam Darnold, just because this offense is going to be moving a little bit better, right? But like JL said, from a throwing perspective, and you talked about this isn't Cam's air it out days that it used to be. The volume's not going to be there, but he's got upside each and every week. And he's got a better chance of getting in the end zone with Cam Newton under center than he did with Sam Darnold or PJ Walker.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. And I think it's just a matter of recalibrating the expectations. There were some people who were considering him top 10, a wide receiver 1. I think he's going to have those weeks, but I think more consistently, he's going to be more of a wide receiver 2.
Yep, and that was me. That was me considering him a wide receiver one during the draft process. Guys, we're going to move on to our next game, the Green Bay Packers versus the Minnesota Vikings. And this was an exciting one, came down to the wire. The Vikings pulled it out 34-31 after a comeback from the Packers.
Yeah, this game was very exciting. It definitely came down to the wire here. Vikings lost AJ Dillon. So on the Packers side of this, AJ Dillon, he had a pretty lackluster game. 11 carries for 53 yards, 0 touchdown. I certainly expected a better game out of him this week. I believe on one of our earlier streams this week on our YouTube channel, I threw him in the must-start category, and he didn't quite live up to that. Simon, how do you project? What do you think about AJ Dillon going forward as he fills in for Aaron Jones while he recovers from his MCL sprain, I believe it is? How are you feeling about AJ Dillon? Is he someone that you have to start every week? Is he someone that is more of a flex play, or that he's more that solid RB2 area?
I don't think you were wrong putting him in the must start. We can look at the rankings afterwards all we want and say, oh, he finished as RB20. He wasn't a must start. No, I think in the game situation and the role that he was given, he was. And what the Packers did shows it as well. They were in a losing game script for most of the game. So they did not run the ball up the middle with AJ Dillon. 11 carries, that's fine. But then on top of that, even in a losing game script, 6 receptions, he's being involved in the passing game there as well. I am hyped for AJ Dillon rest of season and in decent matchups. When Aaron Jones is out, he's going to be ranked as an RB1 for me still, probably in that top 10 to 12 range for most of the games while he's the starter. I understand being slightly disappointed with this, but look at how they used him and how this game played out. You've got to be happy with that. That's encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can maybe blame game script a bit on this one, that it just got, it was a very close game, so they just were passing a lot. Do you have anything to add on that for AJ Dillon's outlook?
No, I think you guys said it perfect. And I think this is a perfect example of right process, wrong result. I do think you were correct in saying he was a must start. And I do think as long as Aaron Jones is out, he is going to be pretty much a must start for the rest, as long as he's got this backfield pretty much to himself.
Yeah. Otherwise on the Packers side here, Aaron Rodgers balled out. Great game. 23 completions on 33 attempts, 385 yards, 4 passing touchdowns. Very good game for him. He did say, I believe after the game, that his toe got stepped on in the second quarter, which it may affect his practice schedule going forward this week. So keep an eye on that injury, see if that affects his whether he's available. On the receiving side, Devonta Adams, 7 receptions on 8 targets, 115 yards, and 2 touchdowns in very classic Devonta Adams fashion. So the other very interesting point here, Marquez Valdes-Scantling had 10 targets, which is the most targets out of any player on this team. He only caught 4 of those. He only caught 4 receptions on those 10 targets. He had 123 yards and a touchdown. Simon, are you interested in Marquez Valdes-Scantling going forward? Should he be rostered? Are you confident at all throwing him in a FanDuel lineup in the right matchup?
No confidence in starting Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He's not needed on this offense for them to find success with Devonta Adams out there in a lot of games, but he's got some serious upside, right? Aaron Rodgers seems like he likes him as the second option whenever he does need to go somewhere else with the ball. And Aaron Rodgers is an incredible quarterback and a great offense. So there's always going to be interest. He's someone I think if you've got bye week problems, injury problems, you can plug him in your flex and hope for a game like this, hope for a touchdown, hope for a big pass. But this kind of volume, I do not expect him to be the leading target, the most targeted receiver on this Green Bay team very often going forward.
How do you feel, Jay, about Marquez Valdes-Scantling?
I want absolutely no part of him. No confidence. I feel like this happens with him every year. He'll have a big game. Everybody's, he's the number 1 pickup. We finally have the wide receiver 2 on the Packers offense, and he goes out and puts up a goose egg. So while I do think, especially being involved in this offense, he does have some upside, it's basically rolling the dice. You've got no idea when he's going to have these games. This offense goes through Devonta Adams and the running backs. I don't want any part of MVS.
Yeah, this is a season high on targets. He did miss a good chunk of the seasons, weeks 4 through 9. But actually, in the beginning of the season, he had a week 1, he had an 8 target game, and then 4 and then 4 for weeks 2 and 3. And then the last 2 weeks before this week were 2 and 2. So I think you're right there, Jay. I think you're absolutely right.
Let's clip that. I like hearing you say that.
You're absolutely right, Jay.
Wait, before you move on, are you just going to completely skip over Josiah DeGuara? We're not even going to talk about him?
Yes, what? Josiah DeGuara had a touchdown, a touchdown, 2 completions on 2 targets and 37 yards. There, we touched on him. Let's
So
move on
him
to
or
the
Devonta
Vikings.
Adams?
Oh, that's tough. You know what? I think I'll go with Devonta Adams on that one.
Okay,
It's
it's
close though.
close.
It's very close.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the Viking side of this, Kirk Cousins, decent game. Dalvin Cook played like Dalvin Cook. I don't know that there's much here to talk about. Justin Jefferson balled out as per usual. Adam Thielen had a pretty good game. Eight receptions on 10 targets, 82 yards, and a touchdown, which is very consistent with what we see from Adam Thielen. If he gets that touchdown, he's great for your fantasy teams. If not, then you're left a little bit disappointed. Yeah, and then I guess the last piece to talk here is Tyler Conklin had 3 receptions on 3 targets and 35 yards, which I think most of us expect. Like week to week, he falls to that category of just boomer bust tight ends. Are either of you guys? Are you taking anything away from here? Regarding Tyler Conklin,
As expected, these games are in there. He's not a receiving first tight end. He's going to have weeks that are just complete stinkers like this one.
He's a streamer in good matchups.
Yep. All right, that's all I got.
Okay, guys, we're going to move on to my favorite game of the day, not the Browns versus the Lions. So the Cleveland Browns won this game 13-10 over the Detroit Lions. The winless Detroit Lions 0-8-1. The Browns.
I'm surprised Number Fire doesn't throw an L in here for the Browns.
That's what I was looking at. That I was looking for the L, trying to see if it snuck in there, but it did not. On the Cleveland side of this ball, guys, Nick Chubb is Nick Chubb. Whenever he's healthy, you start him each and every single week. No questions asked. 22 carries, 130 yards, and he even got a receiving touchdown this week. But without that, you still would have been happy with his start. The big thing I wanted to bring up, and this isn't even a question for you guys. When Nick Chubb is healthy, don't start Dearness Johnson. Do not put him into your lineups and redraft. Do not put him into your FanDuel lineups. I know people are used to seeing the Browns with this 1A, 1B with Kareem Hunt healthy. And there was the idea that with what Dearness Johnson has shown that he's going to sneak into that 1B role with Kareem Hunt out. Nick Chubb is the 1A and the 1B when Kareem Hunt is out. And he's going to continue to get that work. Dearness Johnson, I believe, only got 5 carries today. And that's worthless for fantasy. So make sure you guys aren't starting him. Do either of you guys think there's any value for Dearness Johnson while Nick Chubb is healthy?
No, they just don't use him. They don't use him while he's in. So I have no interest in Dearness Johnson until we see some sort of sustained usage.
Yep, I just wish we would have went full screen with you with that Dearness Johnson rant, because that was beautiful.
Yes.
I mean,
it was even better the second time I heard it.
Yeah, exactly.
I've done it a couple of times today. I've just heard so many people out here saying that, he's earned a job as a flex-worthy player. He's earned a role in that offense.
Job.
But every single thing we've seen, every game we've seen with Nick Chubb as the starter, like where Nick Chubb is healthy, Kareem Hunt is not, Dearness Johnson doesn't get used. He just doesn't get the usage necessary of a fantasy running back. Outside of that, Baker Mayfield looked terrible, but he's also coming off an injury. I believe he was listed in the injury report with an everything injury, just a bit banged up going into this week. So I think we saw a bit of that going forward. But Jarvis Landry, even with the poor-ish performance from Baker, had himself a decent enough fantasy game this week. So, he had 8 targets and a rushing touchdown. So, Jay, how do you view Jarvis Landry rest of the season? Is he a wide receiver 2, a flex? Where are you putting him?
I know he hasn't really looked that good, but I think he's a back-end wide receiver 2. I think Baker, it's as long as Baker starts to get healthy, and I'm not necessarily a Baker fan by any means, but he's been banged up. He's going out there. You got to give him credit. He's going out there while he's hurt, trying to lead his team to wins. He's definitely, even a banged up Baker Mayfield is better off than Case Keenum. Banged up Baker. So that's a good one. I do think that he's that's a good one. Definitely a wide receiver 3. I think as Baker starts to get healthy, he's going to jump back into that wide receiver 2 status.
Dale, are you that's a little bit of optimism from Jay about Jarvis Landry for rest of season. Are you equally as optimistic, or are you a bit lower on Jarvis?
I'm a bit lower on Jarvis.
You're wrong. Targets, okay.
That's fine. Could be 8 targets. Who's his competition, right? So like in that sense, I'm a little bit fine. I'm fine being confident with Jarvis Landry in that the opportunity will be there. There's not many people who are going to take targets away from him. I'm not very confident in this offense, and I'm not very confident that even though he may have a high target share, that there's going to be a high volume for Jarvis Landry this season. So I'm out on Jarvis Landry probably the rest of the season.
And I live somewhere between you two guys. I think he's probably a very solid, safe wide receiver 3 rest of season. This is a
Texas isn't between North Carolina and Baltimore. What are you talking about?
Oh, good one.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of.
That's a
If
dad
you go
joke right
if you go the other way,
was.
like all the way around the world,
Can we
Texas
just edit
is
that
another.
out? Let's just edit that out.
Yeah.
This isn't live. Don't worry about it, Jay. Everything we'll edit it out in post production. No, but I think he's probably a wide receiver 3. This is a run first team, and they're going to want to be a run first team. And then especially when Kareem Hunt gets back, I expect the shift to move even further in that direction as they've got these 2 power backs that they can lean on. But Jarvis Landry's the guy. It's him or Donovan Peoples-Jones or Anthony Schwartz. I like it's Jarvis Landry who's going to be getting the majority of those targets.
Yeah, and don't take I'm out on him saying that like you can't start him. I would start him if I need to or on a week to week basis. It's more so like I don't have the confidence to start him every week.
Yep. I get that. He's a wide receiver 3, so he's by no means a must start in my eyes either. On the Detroit side of this ball, so Jared Goff was out, which means we got Tim Boyle. And as you can see right here, out of all of the offensive players for the Detroit Lions, Tim Boyle had the lowest fantasy score. And guess who had to start him in the league?
I'm going to say.
I would like to apologize because I think it was last week I said that this offense would be better off with Jared Goff not starting. Yeah, I was wrong. It
When Tim Boyle was running out on the field, they were like, this is a guy who in college threw more interceptions than touchdowns, but let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
So it just felt like they were setting him up for an absolutely awful game. Like the announcers jinxed him at the beginning, but it wasn't good. Only 77 passing yards. And you saw that with the receiving options there in Detroit. Not a single one of them was fantasy relevant, but Deandre Swift yet again comes out, carves out a role, shows us the talent level that he has. So, Jay, DeAndre Swift, rest of season, he showed he can do it with Jared Goff, Tim Boyle. Doesn't matter who you throw back there. He can find success. Do you view him as an RB1 rest of season, a top 12 guy?
100%. He's locked and loaded RB1. Honestly, yeah. He's top 5 for me. Like the volume he's getting, if he can have a good game with Tim Boyle in there, I mean, what else do you want? I think he's somebody. The volume he's getting. It was Williams back this week. I didn't see. Did he play?
He had 7 carries for 11 yards.
Right. So there was a lot of concern earlier in the year that he was going to take work from him. That hasn't happened. I think DeAndre Swift is a top 5 running back rest of the season.
JL, are you as bullish, or how do you view DeAndre Swift?
I think I put him outside the top 5, mainly because of his offense. Right now, or I guess going into this week in PPR leagues, he is the running back 5. I don't expect him to finish there. I think he'll more likely probably finish as RB 7 or 8. But I'm very bullish on him going forward in terms of I think he's going to be consistently valuable to throw in your fantasy lineups going forward.
Yep, I'm with you there, JL. You're downgrading him from what Jay said a little bit, but it's hardly a downgrade saying that he's still a top 10 running
it's
back.
Splitting hairs at that point.
It's splitting hairs at that point.
You're ecstatic if he's your RB1.
Exactly.
Yep. Guys, the other player I wanted to talk about from this Lions offense, though, was TJ Hawkinson. So even with how abysmal this Lions offense was, he still put up enough to give you a week you were fine with from a tight end, right? It was disappointing by TJ Hawkinson standards, but 6 receptions, 51 yards, without a touchdown this week. After the goose egg he laid last week, you were more than happy to see that. So, Jay, my question for you, we flirted with Hawkinson being in that top 6, the must-start guys each and every week, right? We've got Kelsey, Waller, Kittle, Andrews, and then I feel like there's been some question marks around the other 2 over the past couple weeks, Pitts and Hawkinson. So who would you rather have rest of season, Kyle Pitts or TJ Hawkinson?
That's a tough question. Between the 2, I would probably go Kyle Pitts, but it's close. And I think you're right. Before the season started, those 2 were considered to be in that top tier, but I feel like they're in a tier of their own. And I might throw Dallas Goddard in there too, where they're not in that top tier. They're not in the back end of, you're just hoping for a touchdown. They've got some talent. It's just the offenses, both the Falcons and the Lions offenses have just been awful. I will say, especially if Calvin Ridley comes back this season, I think that's an advantage for Kyle Pitts because all the defensive attention won't be on him. So No question for me. I lean slightly Kyle Pitts if Calvin Ridley doesn't come back. If he does, then it's Kyle Pitts, no question.
Joe, what about you? Are you on the Pitt side of this or on the Hawkinson side? Which player would you rather have on your team rest of season?
I completely agree with Jay. I think we got Kelsey in a tier of his own, and then tier 2 is Waller, Kittle, Andrews, and there's Pitts and Hawkinson. And I would throw Goddard in there as well, like Jay said. I would rather have Pitts, personally. I would rather have Pitts than Hawkinson. He's seen a little bit more, a higher target volume, more sustainable target volume throughout the season. And I think his offense is Pitts' offense is better than Hawkinson's at this point, which is sad. We're kind of comparing bottom of the bottom here. But yeah, I would rather have Pitts.
Man, I'm going to go on the Hawkinson side, and there's just a slight tiebreaker for me. And that's once we saw this Atlanta Falcons offense take a nosedive, we kind of saw Pitt's production take a nosedive. We've seen TJ Hawkinson find fantasy success in weeks where his offense has been abysmal. He's put up some really big weeks, and they've lost every single game. I think they're in that same tier. They're that same level. I just have a little bit more trust in this Detroit offense getting Hawkinson the ball based on what we've seen. Pitts definitely could as the Atlanta Falcons figure it out down the stretch. But they're in that same tier, and I'll take that from what we've seen in the current state of the Detroit offense. But they are so close there.
They play each other in week 16.
Oh boy, water bet week 16. Kyle Pitts versus TJ Hawkinson. Just kidding. I don't want any part of that. I'm out on that
thanks.
one. Guys, we're going to move on to the Indianapolis Colts. I don't even want to say the other team. This was just the Colts game pretty much here. So this was the Colts game. I think the Bills forgot to come out to play.
It wasn't even the Colts game. It was the Jonathan Taylor game. He was a true slate breaker. 4 rushing touchdowns, 185 rushing yards. While he, I guess if you want to say disappointed with 3 receptions for 19 yards, he did also throw in a 5th touchdown and a reception touchdown. Playing him in my home league, it hurts my heart because that man went off. There was no room for anybody else on this team to do anything because Jonathan Taylor just went nuts. Carson Wentz, didn't turn the ball over or anything like that, but he only had 11 completions for 106 yards. That's all he needed. Nahim Hines, 4 rushes. He really wasn't involved that much. Michael Pittman, there was talks of him jumping into that high-end wide receiver 2 realm. Well, he's had 2 back-to-back weeks where he really hasn't done much. Granted, this is a different kind of game with the way that Jonathan Taylor played. So for the rest of season, Simon, Christian McCaffrey or Jonathan Taylor?
I did not want you to ask that question because that's the question going into next season, right? Going into next season as draft time comes around, Jonathan Taylor's really making a case for himself to be the redraft 101. But I just I want you to look at what Christian McCaffrey's doing. So in the game since he's been back, I believe he only has 1 touchdown, right? He's got a couple weeks over 20 points without a single touchdown. He is so involved in that offense each and every single week. This team can find success, and they've done it without Jonathan Taylor getting this volume. The Panthers don't do that without Christian McCaffrey getting it. I'll lean, but the upside is there with Taylor. It's the better offense. I'll lean McCaffrey. I feel a little bit safer in the volume he's going to get every single week. But, man, going into next season, it's going to be tough not to want to take JT 101. I hate my answer. Go ahead,
Jail.
Oh, I thought you weren't going to ask me. I thought this was a Simon-only question. I'm going to take the other side. I'm going to take Jonathan Taylor. I'm going to take Jonathan Taylor rest of the season. Even when Christian McCaffrey has played, he hasn't. All of his other metrics here aren't as good as Jonathan Taylor has been putting up. He hasn't had a single game with over 100 rushing yards. I know McCaffrey makes a lot of his fantasy points in the receiving game, and he certainly has that over Jonathan Taylor. But I would rather go with Jonathan Taylor here. I think they're pretty equal, but I would lean towards Taylor.
And I'm going to go with Simon on this one. And JL, I think you made our point for us is even though he's not having these huge rushing games, he's so involved in the passing game. He's only had 1 touchdown and he's still getting over that 20-point threshold. Like Simon said, I mean, it's splitting hairs. These guys are 2 of the best in the entire league. So you're fine with either one of them. But I would lean Christian McCaffrey simply because of the usage in the passing game. And inexplicably, we've seen where Jonathan Taylor will have a big game, and then Nahim Hines is so involved in the offense next week. So I don't necessarily trust the Colts either. I still think they're going to use Taylor plenty, but Nahim Hines has these one-off games where he goes off. So
I do.
I don't think it affects.
I do trust
Jonathan
that they've
Taylor.
rounded. I think I get what Jay's saying. We've seen games where they heavily utilize Nahim Hines and Jonathan Taylor's usage has gone down. But I do think we've seen the Colts kind of round a corner with how they're using Jonathan Taylor over the past couple weeks. It seems like they've realized that their best chance to win is to run this offense through him instead of through the random backs, Carson Wentz. Jonathan Taylor gives them the best chance to win. So I don't have that same concern you have, Jay, which makes this really, really close between him and CMC. But
it's not me saying that I'm worried about him eating into his workload, but the Panthers don't have that guy that can break off a long run. You know what I mean? Like it's Christian McCaffrey in that backfield, and that's pretty much it. Since he's been back, Chuba's been non-existent.
What about what Albert asked here? Would you take Jonathan Taylor as the number one overall running back in Dynasty? Is he your number one guy?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't.
No question.
Who else would you argue there? Maybe Swift, but I don't think.
The offensive line that they have in Indianapolis. I mean, yeah, it's
I still think CMC is in that conversation. I think it's very actually similar to the redraft argument here.
CMC still in. I'm the type of guy, especially when it comes to running backs, and it's to a fault because I've missed out on these past 2 years on Derrick Henry. But I would rather be a year too early being out than a year too late. The usage that CMC's had, the tread on his tires is worn down. Give me Taylor, the youth, especially in the dynasty formats. Redraft, completely different story. I think they're neck and neck. But dynasty, I would want to get out from CMC before it's too late.
He's 25.
For a 101. A lot of carries on those legs, though.
There is.
Yeah.
And receiving.
Yep. And a lot of receivings on those legs. What about on the Buffalo side of the ball over here?
There's really not much to talk about. Josh Allen didn't have necessarily that great of a game. It wasn't terrible, but 2 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, over 200 yards. It was just not their week. The running backs continue to be a mess. The running back who got the most rushing attempts was Matt Breida. Devin Singletary got 3 carries. Zach Moss got 3 carries. Nothing much from the running backs. And Stephon Diggs, he got 2 touchdowns, but he only had 4 catches. So, this up and down season for Diggs, this up and down season for the Bills continues. I really don't think there's, Dawson Knox, 6 catches, 80 yards, was a leading receiver on the team. It's really hard to trust anybody in the receiving game in this offense. Is Stephon Diggs still a wide receiver 1? Simon, we'll go to you.
Yeah, I think he is. He's got the talent. He's the top receiver on this offense. And I think this offense gets it going a little bit better as the season goes on. Even in the low volume, Josh Allen looks to him first. And I like Dawson Knox rest of the season as well. We saw what he did at the beginning of the season, went out injured. We were a little disappointed upon the return, but he seems to be like a critical part of this passing game.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there was some talk with Gabe Davis having some big games here recently that he might be doing something, but 2 catches, 27 yards. So I don't think you want any part of Gabe Davis. Emmanuel Sanders, too, is up there. It's really Stephon Diggs, and that's the only guy you can trust other than Dawson Knox, like you were saying.
That's what I was going to – I'm sorry, go ahead, Jay.
No, I was just going to ask the same question I asked you. Do you consider Stephon Diggs a wide receiver 1 for the rest of the season?
Absolutely. Going into this week in PPR leagues, he was the wide receiver. He's wide receiver 12. This is a strange game, I guess, for the Bills, but we got to remember that the Colts are a good team. They're a legit good team. Their defense is fantastic. We've seen it many times throughout the season. I saw firsthand in Baltimore when they came here. They are a legit team. They're a legit defense. I don't think that we should not trust necessarily all the Bills' options here, just going based off of this game. I think that they're beatable. Like we've seen a lot of these high-powered quarterback offenses beat this season. We've seen that happen with the Bills. The Bills need to adjust. I'm not worried about Stephon Diggs. He's still finding ways to eat in this offense, even when there are games like this.
Yep, and I think you got my point exactly. A wide receiver 1 for me is a guy that when he has these down games, still finds a way to put up fantasy value. He got those 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, I'm with you guys 100%.
Is Emmanuel Sanders droppable at this point? He was putting up he seemed like a pretty safe wide receiver too at the beginning of the season with some upside, but it's been bad recently. And I know it's probably a product of the Bills offense, but JL, do you think Emmanuel Sanders is even worth rostering?
I think I think he's worth rostering. I still think that he is a flex play. Whereas earlier in the first 6 games of the season, I probably would have said that he's a solid wide receiver 3, even with that upside of a wide receiver 2, with how well he's playing. I think we're seeing him come back down to earth a little bit. His targets have certainly gone down, but I still think you can throw him in those pinch situations or flex plays on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah. Guys, I think we should go ahead and move on to our next game. We'll put any next game.
Next game.
Any Bills fans watching will end your suffering. We don't have to talk about it any longer. And on to a game that made a little bit more sense. The San Francisco 49ers 4-5 beating down the Jaguars 30-10 in this game.
Yeah, I think we were all sort of expecting Jacksonville to lose this one, and they did. 49ers side of the ball, Jimmy Garoppolo had a pretty decent game, 16 completions on 22 attempts, 176 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's nothing special, but it's kind of what we've been seeing from Garoppolo, just like that middling tier. On the running back side, Jeff Wilson, he got 19 carries, 50 yards, 1 reception on 2 targets and 8 yards, and a fumble. He really did nothing with 19 carries. That is a decent number of carries, and this is really the first time that we're seeing him get this sort of volume since being back. Elijah Mitchell was out with his finger injury. And then we saw Trey Sermon play as well, and he had 10 carries for 32 yards, 1 reception, 1 target for 23 yards, and that was pretty underwhelming as well. Simon, are you at all how are you feeling about Jeff Wilson? At this point, is he worth rostering while Elijah Mitchell is injured? Is he worth rostering after that? Who's the RB2 in this offense?
While Elijah Mitchell is injured, sure. It looks like he's going to get the volume. They kept giving it to him, and I assume he'll probably get it. But you never know with Shanahan with which back he's going to throw in there if he doesn't have his guy. Elijah Mitchell's the running back to roster in this offense, and fingers crossed. Sorry, I didn't mean to taunt him because he can't cross his fingers right now. But hopefully Elijah Mitchell comes back pretty soon.
Elijah Mitchell.
Look at me, I can cross my fingers.
Yeah, he's like, I have another hand.
Maybe you're an NFL caliber athlete, but I can cross my fingers. We do have a question in here before we keep going with this game. B. Silva wants to know Claypool or Kenny G full PPR. So this is a game time decision. He is getting real close on this one. Jay, where would you go here?
Man, that is tough. And the only reason it's tough, it's not because I believe in Kenny G, but the Buccaneers defense has struggled against the wide receiver position. Sterling Shepard is out. I still got to go Claypool. I haven't seen anything out of Kenny Golladay this year that gives me any sort of confidence. Give me Claypool.
JL?
I would go Kenny Golladay. I'm worried about Claypool this week.
Is it just the matchup that's making you worried in this one? It's
the matchup. It's the injury, the previous injury. He's going against the Chargers, which is very good secondary. I think I'd rather go with Kenny Golladay here.
Man, these guys are so close in my mind. And yeah, the Tampa Bay matchup is a little bit better, but I'll go with the offense that I trust a little bit more. And I'll go Chase Claypool. I also think the upside's there a bit more. But I get your concerns, Jale. There was no disagreement for me on what you said there. Yep. Just I'll take the risk that comes along with Chase Claypool for that hopefully upside that we can see out on the field.
Yep. So going back to today, how do you feel about Jeff Wilson and Trey Sermon going forward?
I think at this point in redraft leagues, you have zero reason to hold on to Trey Sermon. I do think, especially with Elijah Mitchell, we don't know when he's going to be back. I think Jeff Wilson is somebody, we've seen him do it before in this system, somebody you don't necessarily need to start, but I would still roster him as long as Elijah Mitchell is out. And even if you have the bench space, he's somebody, Elijah Mitchell's, dealt with injury. So even if he is able to come back, who's to say he doesn't come back and get injured again? So I'm not actively looking to drop Jeff Wilson. If you have to, there's no hesitation, but he's somebody I wouldn't mind as an end of the bench stash because of the upside, any running back in this offense.
Yeah. And I guess a I guess we would be remiss not to, if we're talking 49ers running backs, if we didn't mention the best running back on the team, which is Deebo Samuel. 8 carries, 79 yards, and a touchdown, rushing touchdown in this game.
Yeah. The receivers were rushing balls in all over the place today. Jalen Waddle had one. Jarvis Landry had one. Deebo Samuel had one. I was saying this to Jay earlier, but everyone's talking about receiving upside with these backs. Next year, we're going to be talking about rushing upside with these receivers. And eventually, it's all just going to morph into a single position, and it's going to be all flex leagues.
Yeah. The NFL will call them flex players. Deebo, I don't think anyone disagrees. Every week starter here. It's cool to see him getting used in the rushing game. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Elijah Mitchell comes back. I certainly didn't expect this. He only had one reception on 2 targets today, so he was effectively a running back, all things considered. Brandon Ayuk was the wide receiver one on this team. 7 receptions on 7 targets, 85 yards, and a touchdown. It's great to see Ayuk back in. It's great to see Ayuk back performing. It's not consistent. I don't think we're going to see Ayuk provide just consistent value this year. I think it's going to be a type of matchup dependent type thing. Jay, what's your confidence with Ayuk rest of the season?
It's hard to say confidence. I will say it's nice to see him doing this with both Deebo Samuel and George Kittle in the offense. That was the talk of all last year. The only reason Ayuk put up numbers is because they were hurt. They were out. Well, he's putting up numbers with them in here. I hope you didn't drop him in redraft because I saw him dropped in a lot of places. I was able to pick him up in a couple. I'd say he's somebody I feel confident as a wide receiver 3. He definitely can put up wide receiver 2 numbers. He's in this offense. I wouldn't be surprised if he winds up as a top 12 wide receiver some weeks, but we've seen he's been in the doghouse. He's had some weeks where he's just done absolutely nothing. So I can't trust him more than a wide receiver 3. But if I have him as a wide receiver 3, I'm comfortable with that.
How about you, Simon? Are you comfortable throwing Ayuk in a lineup?
Yeah, he was in that like Elijah Moore kind of range of players where you're hoping for a touchdown, hoping something good happened. And he's earned a little bit more in my mind. Now I put him up kind of with like we were talking about Jarvis Landry. Like that would be a decision I'd be looking at. Do I want Jarvis Landry? Do I want Ayuk? Do I want Christian Kirk in my lineup? Do I want Ayuk? So I bump him up almost a full tier into that back end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 range, because that's where those guys are finishing. That's where those guys are scoring. So he's probably starting in most leagues right now, just based on the kind of player that he's been the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, I agree. On the Jacksonville side of this, not really much to talk about. There wasn't really very much
that sums it up.
Relevant players apart from James Robinson, who had 12 carries for 29 yards and a touchdown, 2 receptions on 3 targets and 9 yards, which is a pretty low game, I think, for James Robinson, all things considered. But I don't think we need to talk too much about him. The only player I want to talk about in this game is Dan Arnold, who I think has been someone who a lot of people have been hyping up. Dan Arnold, his usage in this offense has been very promising, but he got skunked today. No targets, 0 targets. Is there anything you can take away from Dan Arnold's game? Is it just like a one-off type of weird game, and he's still just in that weird category of like players, your tight ends you throw in if you need? Simon?
He's a tight end that's likely going to get volume more similar to what we saw the past couple weeks, but I don't think his primary role in this offense when they brought him over here was to just be a pass catching tight end. He's a blocking tight end, and they just lack receiving options. So I think he's been stepping in over there, but there's going to be games like this where he just disappears, right? Because they don't need him in the receiving game necessarily. They want to use him as a pass blocker or a run blocker. So I'm iffy on him. He's one of those, he's in the pile of tight ends after the top 6, and that next little mini tier. The glob. Sorry, he's in the tight end glob down there with, if you want to start him, Tyler Conklin, CJ Uzama, grab one of these guys, throw him in your lineup, and he's probably got the lowest upside, but the safest floor out of any of those, which made this week pretty surprising.
Yeah. Maria had a funny tweet about Jonathan Taylor. Any advice a dude who faced Jonathan Taylor today? Response: enjoy your Thanksgiving.
That was I think it was Marcus Grant that tweeted that out. Somebody said that to him,
nice.
And then he quote tweeted it.
On the nice thing.
He said enjoy your Thanksgiving.
That's pretty awesome, guys. We're going to move on to our next game here. The Cincinnati Bengals versus the Las Vegas Raiders. The Bengals coming out on top 32-13. And hello, Joe Mixon. 30 carries, 123 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. He's that workhorse back. And I know in the offseason there was a lot of hate. Whatever you think about him as a player.
Not from me and Josh. Josh, I hope you're watching. If you're not, me and Josh are the resident Joe Mixon truthers.
Yep, only you two.
That's it.
Only you two. Yeah, so there's only you two who liked him. But he's getting the work. And the band U2 really liked him. So Jay, Joe Mixon, rest of season. Earlier you said Deandre Swift, a top 5 guy. How are you viewing Joe Mixon?
Not top 5, I'll tell you that. But, I definitely think he's a back end RB1. Especially 30 rushing attempts. Like if you're getting that out of a running back, he's got any talent whatsoever. He's going to put up numbers. He looked fantastic in some of these runs. Like I was saying earlier, I've been a Joe Mixon fan. If he was able to stay healthy, I thought he was going to be a running back 1. I'm still going to go with that. I'm not going to say top 5, but I definitely think he's an RB1.
Yeah. And Jail, I had a question for you, a little bit of trivia. I guess you can see it a little bit on the stats here. Maybe you've already cheated, but do you know which receiver led this team in targets today? Led the Bengals?
The Bengals.
Bono.
Was it Boyd? Had to be Boyd, right?
It was Boyd. Boyd led this team in targets today. Boyd had 8 targets to Jamar Chase's 6, and T. Higgins only had 3 targets. So, Jail, what I wanted to ask you, we've pretty much viewed this as a two-headed monster with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, with Tyler Boyd kind of being the odd man out, having random games. Does this concern you at all for T. Higgins, or do you think this was just a game script that worked in the slot wide receiver's favor?
Yeah, I think it's the latter situation, like you mentioned. We've seen this before with Tyler Boyd. We've mentioned this before on this exact show that there are going to be games like this. T. Higgins is by no means locked in as the wide receiver 2. Jamar Chase is by no means locked in as the wide receiver 1 on this team. I'm sorry, all the Jamar Chase hype train people. It's true fact. It was a slow game for Jamar Chase. He got a touchdown, which kind of saved his day. But apart from that, it was pretty slow. So I think it was one of those games where Tyler Boyd got the majority of the targets, and even that he didn't do that much with it, right? It's a pretty average performance here.
Yep. Jay, are you agreeing on that?
I agree with everything but Jamar Chase not being the wide receiver 1 on this team. I do think he's the wide receiver 1 on this team. I think it's close. I think it's
just factual, Jay.
Well, it's okay if you're wrong. He's the big play option, and that's what I will say. A lot of people think it's clear cut. He is the wide receiver 1 by a big margin because he's been getting the big plays, the big touchdowns. But when they're not hitting, you're going to see some weeks like this. So while I do think he is the top option on this team, I do think it's more of like a wide receiver 1 and 1A with T. Higgins. And Boyd is, like you said, we're going to have weeks like this. It's nothing that I'm still not comfortable putting Boyd in any lineups outside of the deepest of leagues.
Yeah.
And let me clarify here. I wasn't saying Jamar Chase is not the wide receiver 1 on the team, but that for each week, he's not going to be locked in as the wide receiver 1 for that week. There are weeks where he is not going to be the leader. Yes.
Okay. All right.
He's not a guaranteed target leader.
Sorry for putting words in your mouth.
Thank you.
How dare you? You're fired.
Don't you put anything in my mouth.
Yeah. Bye.
Hope you're back, and now you're on the bottom. How's it feel down there, Jay?
Let me see.
Guys, on the
yeah, there you go. Now you're on the
Raiders. On the Raiders side of this ball, my favorite moment in this game. It didn't matter for fantasy, but there was a touchdown caught, and the announcer goes, "Hunter Renfrow got the ball," and then he goes, "Wait, that's not Hunter Renfrow. That's Foster Moreau." Like just.
Getting so excited for Foster Moreau.
It just cracked me up. But Foster Moreau did come away with a touchdown. If you started him, you were probably happy just because you probably expected nothing. But outside of that, you weren't very happy with who?
Hate's a strong word, J.O.
He always steals these touchdowns. It feels like every week.
You shouldn't hate anybody.
But outside of Darren Waller, you probably were not very happy starting any of these options on the Las Vegas Raiders. Darren Waller had 8 targets, 7 receptions for 116 yards, no touchdown. It was kind of nice seeing him put up a decent week without a touchdown, right? 15 points for a tight end is really good, and he didn't even need a touchdown to get into the end zone there. Jay, so Darren Waller has slipped quite a bit in like the tight end rankings. He's outside of that top 5. I believe he's number 7 currently right now on the season in PPR formats. If you had to make a bet today, where would you think Darren Waller finishes?
That's a good question. I do think he finishes inside the top 5. So I'll say number 5. I wasn't necessarily, I know both of you guys were very big on Darren Waller coming into the season. And it wasn't that I was necessarily out on him, but I didn't like the draft capital that you had to use to get him with, the questions that you would have. Yeah, I'll stick with top 5, right at 5, because I do think better days are ahead. He has here recently has been a little inconsistent, hasn't seen the targets that we were hoping, after that first week where he got hyper targeted. Definitely somebody you're throwing in your lineup every week as a tight end. There's no question about that.
Joe, do you agree with Jay's take on top 5 at the end of the season? He's number 7 right now. The names in front of him are Kelsey Andrews, Hunter Henry, Kyle Pitts, Mike Gesicki, and TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah, I think that by the end of the season, he'll be ahead of Hunter Henry for sure. And Gesicki, I think he'll likely be ahead of him.
Yep, you guys hit the nail exactly how I would have hit it. How do you like that change on that expression? We hit the nail the same way. But I agree with you. Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki, I expect him to fully pass. And I think there's a very real chance he passes Kyle Pitts as well with the way that Atlanta offense has looked so far, sneaking him maybe a spot higher. Let's move on to our next game now, though, guys. The next game we're going to be talking about is the Dallas versus Kansas City game, the game that everyone was hyped for going into this week. That seemed like the highlight game, what was destined to be a shootout, right? Wrong. Chiefs won 19-9 in this one. The Chiefs won 19-9 in this one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good there. Sorry, I had a complete total brain fart on that one. We were really excited for this game, thinking it had a high over-under, the highest on the week, if I'm not mistaken here. But the lack of Amari Cooper seemed to be really troubling for this Dallas offense. I don't know what else to attribute it for because they just looked kind of lost.
And
Jay,
CeeDee Lamb got hurt too. He got hurt in the second quarter and didn't play the entire second half. So without both of their top options, but even before then, you're right. This offense did not look the same without Amari Cooper. We were talking about it earlier in the day, how, Amari Cooper feels like he's getting underappreciated because CeeDee Lamb has looked so good, and a lot of people are considering him the wide receiver 1 on this team, but I think he looks great. Yeah. I mean, I think Cooper's still a big part of this offense, and I think they'll be fine, but I think that I think they need Cooper to be that high-flying offense.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much as Cooper as, they had some other injuries. I know their tackle was out on the offensive line this week, Tyron Smith. And I can't remember if they had another offensive lineman who was out this week. So I think that was probably more likely the cause of some of these the Dallas struggles on offense, but more so than Cooper. But I think they'll be fine likely going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. This is a weird week. And you know what? I do think maybe this does highlight, though. I feel like Amari Cooper has been a little bit forgotten in this offense with the excitement around CeeDee Lamb. But Amari Cooper is a very good receiver, and him being on the field elevates CeeDee Lamb's game, does not detract from it. CeeDee Lamb is not better off being the sole wide receiver over here. It's great for him having Amari Cooper on the opposite side of the field. So for those people expecting CeeDee Lamb to just jump off the board whenever he's the alpha in this offense after Amari Cooper's gone, I just want to remind you of what happened with Juju Smith-Schuster whenever Antonio Brown left. It's hard to be the one.
You see it again with Kyle Pitts and Calvin. Yep, exactly.
Yep.
That's where I was going. Same thing.
It's hard to be the one whenever there's not another piece taking the attention there. And Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb do that for each other here. Any concerns about Ezekiel Elliott, or this was just a bad game script for him?
No, he kind of had a weird ankle injury in the first half. Where he rolled his ankle, and then he did come back in later in the game, but I'm sure that likely affected him the rest of the game.
Yeah. On the Kansas City side of this ball, Travis Kelce, 5 receptions, 74 yards, 16.3 points, doing what he does.
And a rushing touchdown.
Man, another one. See, I'm telling you, flex. Just everyone's a flex at this point. Who cares if you're a running back or a tight end or a wide receiver? You can do whatever you want on this field. So I saw a question the other day. Travis Kelce is on his way to his 6th straight season as the number 1 tight end in fantasy football. He's well on his way. Barring injury, it seems unlikely that he's not going to do that. What more does Travis Kelce have to do to enter the conversation for the greatest tight ends of all time? How much more do you need from him, Jay? Because this has been consistent for a long time now.
I mean, the only knock you could say, and it's not necessarily a knock, but what you're always going to go to is when you're saying the greatest all time of any sport is different eras. And this is such a passing era in the NFL.
Yeah.
It's kind of tailor made for him to be able to put numbers like this. He's definitely in the conversation. I'll stop short at saying he is the greatest of all time, because I feel like there is some validity to that different eras, it's hard to compare guys.
Yeah.
So surefire Hall of Famer. He's definitely in the conversation, but I can't say he is the greatest of all time.
I just can't believe 6 straight years
that
he's approaching as the number one. That is so unbelievably consistent. That's awesome. Now, the other main talking point here, Clyde Edwards-Helaire did come back, and I know a lot of people were expecting maybe a split between him and Darrell Williams, that it was going to be a split backfield over here. It doesn't seem to be that way. Clyde Edwards-Helaire did get the majority of the carries here. JL, is that what you expect going forward rest of season? The CEH is going to be the lead back?
Yes, absolutely. I think he's going to be the lead back, despite what fantasy Twitter thinks. They sunken cost fallacy is absolutely a real thing, and I do think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a better running back than Darrell Williams. And I think that they'll likely give Darrell Williams some more work now that they've seen him be semi-productive in this offense. But I think CEH is still the guy here.
I think what's happening, instead of a 1A, 1B, you've got the starter and the reliever, and they're going to use Darrell Williams to keep their starters' legs fresh through the rest of the season and into the playoffs, instead of a let's run a 1A, 1B kind of situation like the Browns do sometimes. Jay, how do you feel about this?
I completely agree with both of you guys. I thought that everybody, like you said, fantasy Twitter was saying, oh, is this Darrell Williams backfield now? It's a 50-50 split now. CEH is the guy. He could add even bigger day if Travis Kelce didn't have a rushing touchdown. If that would have went to CEH, people would be losing their minds. So I'm all in on CEH the rest of the season in this backfield.
Yep. Guys, we are going to wrap up after that game for today. I know that Sunday Night Football has already started. Steelers and Chargers underway. We want to go watch that. You guys want to go watch that, so we're going to get out of here. Before I do that, though, I want to remind everyone watching, if you have not done so already and you're watching this, hit the subscribe button on YouTube to FanDuel's YouTube channel and go on over to their Twitch channel. Hit the follow button. You can find them across all social platforms at FanDuel, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and they have a whole team of awesome content creators helping you win some money and win your leagues. So make sure you go subscribe across all those platforms. We are out of here for tonight, though, guys. That's going to be it for us. Josh isn't here to say it, so who's going to do it?
Trading makes fantasy fun.
I win.
We'll see you guys later. Have a good night.